Do the elemental lords have personal beef with Elune, and did the element of spirit defeat the old gods by making them flesh? Please watch my video on the element of spirit for context in this video. In the Tauran myth, Eyes of the Earth Mother, it is said the elements are together and aid Elune and Anshi to fight back the shadows that invaded the world. In the end, Anshi is injured to bleed forever. The Earth Mother rips out her eyes and puts them into the sky, creating the moons and sun. And then the Earth Mother sacrifices herself to the earth to save it from the corrupting shadows. The shadows are noted as being the old gods on the wiki. From the perspective that the Earth Mother was the elemental lord of spirit, I think this event is what sent the elements out of harmony, because there is no element of spirit to bring them together. But I find it peculiar that the elements not only turn on each other, but seem to have disagreements with mortals who are a product of spirit, decay, and the domain of life. And specifically, the elements of fire have a strong disdain for the domain of life. It is said in the tale that Anshi wields influence over the elements of earth and fire, while Elune influenced water and wind. And twice the Fireland has sought to take holy places of life, such as Mount Hyjal and Yggdrasil. This is very specific for Ragnaros and his successors to seek and destroy places abundant with life and with world trees. The Druid of the Flame talks so much about how they've reached some sort of enlightenment or epiphany, that they've learned something and must take vengeance, or recognize that Elune had abandoned or sacrificed them. While we could chalk this up to the Druid of the Flame claiming to answer to the Twilight Prophet and Thrall referring to them as the forces of the Twilight Cult and therefore being mind-controlled or mentally corrupted, I think there may be an additional angle to this. The original Druid of the Flame, Fandral Staghelm, was responsible for spreading clones of the World Tree elsewhere in the world, which eventually became entry points to the nightmare for Yogg-Saron and the other old gods. These trees are the entrances to the Dreamway. In the novel Stormrage, Malfurion would dispense with Xavius within the dream and then deal with Fandral in our world. During the Cataclysm, Fandral would be transformed by the Fire Lord, and then Fandral recruited disillusioned druids to the Druid of the Flame. In the Molten Front campaign into the Firelands, we learn that the Druid of the Flame are trying to garner some sort of power known as the Solar Core to burn all of Azeroth. And this is narratively similar to what happens when they appear again in Dragonflight. The Druid of the Flame make an axe for Farak to enter the dream. Farak and the forces of the Firelands intend to consume the power of the World Tree and consume the world in flame. Both locations contain a World Tree, and in both assaults on these places, there is a plot to consume the world with fire. Because of this, I suspect the World Trees in both instances are the method by which these events will be brought about, and why they are targeted. There is overlap here with Inzoth's plot in the Emerald Nightmare raid. Malfurion says Il'gynoth will use the roots of the World Tree to travel to the core of the world and make the nightmare a reality. Presumably, as I suspect, by manifesting creatures of the nightmare into the material world through the Rift of Uln as a gateway. I think this was a similar plot targeting the other World Trees by the element of fire. But why? Ragnaros and his successors, as well as Fyrakk and the Primalists, do not see Elune or Anshi or life as an ally to them. It makes sense to me why they fight each other for elemental supremacy due to a lack of spirit, but of all the methods to attain eternal fire on the planet, this is hyper-specific to life and draws the Dream and Druids into conflict. They care not for Elune's chosen children, nor the Tauran worshippers of Anshi who they once fought alongside. I have a theory for that. We know that the elemental lords hate their imprisonment within the elemental planes, and Therazane giving quarter to Deathwing within Deepholm is an example of their contempt for imprisonment. I imagine she was cooperative in his plan to bring about the Shattering, or Second Sundering, which broke down the barrier between the elemental planes and Azeroth. She will feign ignorance of this when you talk to her about it, and simply note that he made a lot of noise but never bothered her. Both the Fire Lord and Wind Lord are seeking to usher their forces into the world to wage war again, as they did in ancient times. And elementals seem quite eager in general to aid the Primalist, as I do not recall protest on their part. It's possible the elements serving the Primalists and Incarnates are bound by decay shamanism, but it is unclear, and at least some are eager to join the Incarnate forces. In fact, you can think of the Primalist, Elements, Druid of the Flame, and Incarnate's part in Dragonflight as a continuance of this ancient war against the Titans and life. In lore that is no longer considered canon, it is said the elemental plane is a prison within the twisting nether created by the Titans, which to me sounds similar to the demon prison realm of Mardum, which was created by Sargeras to imprison demons in his conquest. Given that this lore about its placement within the twisting nether is no longer canon, and that it comes from the tabletop RPG, and gives conflicting accounts about the location of the elemental plane relative to other planes of existence, it's not easy to discern. However, I think that the elemental lords hold a special grudge for Elune and the domain of life at large for being abandoned when they were enslaved by the old gods. complicit when they were sealed away by the Titans, and then for Elune cooperating with Titan forces after their imprisonment. This is the minimum that we can assume happened, but I would also speculate maybe that Elune betrayed them in some way, either by aiding the Titans in defeating them, or aiding the Titans in binding them to the elemental plane. But why then do elemental lords still cooperate with their former old god masters after having been freed of them for so long? While their alliance could be tenuous or circumstantial again, bearing involvement in their freedom and cataclysm, it may be that they feel a sense of kinship with the old gods. I have wondered for quite some time why the old gods bear flesh, blood, spawn living creatures, and spread their death, decay, and madness and consumption everywhere they go. What is the method by which they corrupted the Titan forges to make fleshy mortals? The old gods do not resemble their void creators. The tales by Torrhen describe the arrival and approach of the old gods as shadows. The old gods do not resemble Dimensius or voidlings or anything of that variety, but are instead uniquely grotesque and fleshy. And while the tales of the Earth Mother says that the corrupting shadows were defeated with the Earth Mother's sacrifice, we know that the old gods are not dead and would go on to enslave the remaining elementals and turn on their void masters. The element of spirit is the method by which elementals become flesh mortals. And the moment the Earth Mother, who is likely the element of spirit, sacrificed herself to Azeroth to save the world soul, I think a result of that was making these shadows into fleshy old gods who became alive and self-aware. In their own twisted way, they serve the purpose of protecting the world from the Void Lords. Their reasons are not noble, but for the sake of avarice, power, pride, and lordship. However, to this end that the old gods would not finalize corrupting the world's soul to turn over to the Void Lords, and then act in defiance of Dimensius by imprisoning Xal'atath, the Earth Mother was successful. Whether the old gods becoming flesh creatures was a direct intended effect of her sacrifice, or an indirect consequence of it, is unclear. Perhaps the elements find kinship in the old gods because they are similarly offspring of the element of spirit and Earth Mother who died to give them flesh and free will. And perhaps both the old gods and elemental lords hold such incredible disdain for Elune, who has brokered deals with their wardens and executioners. Oh, and one more thing. Me and my Mythic Plus team are going to be doing MDI time trials, and so I will probably post videos of it here or maybe even live stream. I'll have to run it by the team if they want to do anything with that. So if you're interested in my Mythic Plus content, that will be happening in a couple weeks. I think it's around 10 days away at this point. So yeah, you could come back here whenever time trials start.